Good afternoon, one and all. Assassinate Grace here, March 9th, 2023. I'm reading chapter 41, and it's quite a long chapter, so bear with me. MJ shook her head when she saw the look of despair on Carrie's face in the clip they showed on the Fox News network. Someone happened to have a phone handy to get a view of the moments after they informed her wife that she was being refused admission to the U.S. She yawned and stretched and tried to release the tension out of her arms and shoulders. She hadn't had this much pain from fibromyalgia in years. This was a combination of 2 months of incarceration without medication. She had prescription drugs, but they did almost nothing except give her side effects like nausea and diarrhea and doziness all day, and then she would be wide awake when she went to bed. She tried to describe it to the doctor how the smoked marijuana helped both the muscle tension and the sleeplessness. She described it as before smoking, feeling like she was walking under heavy weights, and then after, it was as though the gravity had been turned down. She could stand up straight and walk normally. The doctor scoffed and wrote another prescription for an anti-inflammatory. He refused to give her anything to help her sleep on the basis she was an addict. She returned to her cell and lay down and closed her eyes. Her cellmate Elsie returned shortly and tried to quietly dig out her art supplies from her storage drawer. She reclined on her side across the room and spread her equipment out on the bed within reach. She was in lust with MJ from the moment she met her. This woman was such an enigma. How could she be such a maverick, but at the same time be such a dove? She began to sketch her as she lay in repose. She used a dark purple to fill in the deep shadows around MJ's eyes. The greatest challenge was to illustrate the hand that lay on top of the thin mattress uncovered. The skillful drawing of hands often eluded Elsie. She did what she could, but with her cheap coarse pastels, and then she examined her work with the most critical eye. She closed her sketchbook and without further inspiration gathered her tools and placed them very carefully on the floor beside her bunk, and then rolled over and tried to nap. Soon she heard MJ stir across the room from her. She rolled over to check if her cellmate was getting up. She saw to her joy that, in fact, MJ was rising and stretching. She began, "Have a good snooze?" To this, MJ answered coldly, "Not so much." It was apparent to MJ that her companion on this trip through hell was enamored of her. She tried to keep a distance to prevent the girl from getting hurt by misunderstanding. She missed the other cellmate who had been transferred out to another prison. That woman was straight and very open-minded to MJ's ideas. They conversed at night for hours when neither of them could sleep, when they were the only ones in the cell. She rose and urinated in the corner toilet and then washed her hands and splashed water over her face. She wondered what time it was. She guessed it was just about mid-afternoon. Still 3 or 4 hours until dinner. She pulled her journal from the nook and plucked the pen from the center of the coiled back and opened it and began writing. "Dear God, I know that this is happening for a reason, but I'm getting a bit impatient. I miss Carrie and my cat and my friends and my bed and my life. I miss my own medication. I miss my grandchildren. I miss washing dishes. I miss cleaning my bathroom and the cat's litter box. I miss my Facebook and my online Scrabble games. I miss my church friends and my writing groups. I miss waiting for the city bus in the frigid cold and listening to loud neighbors leave the building by hammering down the 3 flights of stairs with work boots at 5 in the morning. I missed having to pick up NJ's clothes and shoes and papers and putting them away after waiting 3 weeks for her to do it. I even missed the secondhand smoke that is in our hallway by times. I miss worrying about having enough butter to last through the week. On the other hand, I'm grateful that I'm not in prison in Turkey. I'm grateful that I have 3 meals a day and safe water to drink. I'm grateful for toilet paper. I'm grateful I'm not fearful of my cellmates. I'm grateful I can walk. I'm grateful I can hear and read and write. I'm grateful I have a loving wife and a community who believe in me. I'm grateful I had the wonderful mother I had who taught me the importance of thinking outside the box by her power of example. I'm grateful for the generous people of the 12-step programs who had the patience with me to teach me there was a different way to live. But most of all, I'm grateful I have the vision to see the nighttime starry sky when I get out of this place. Amen. She closed the book and replaced it to its nest. She lifted her palms before her at eye level and said to the space, I surrender. It's all yours. She released a long, slow sigh. Then she landed on the single small metal chair they shared and started firmly massaging her scalp with her fingertips. She heaved several deep sighs until at last she lowered her arms and leaned back in the chair and gathered herself together and stretched and released the tension she'd been carrying. Come on. She said the serenity prayer silently, trying not to check to see if the woman was watching her. MJ found her most comfortable sitting position on the bed and composed herself to meditate. She would practice mindfulness and she'd see if she could get further relief from her fibro, if she could prevent the pain from building up tension. The cause of most of her pain was that she was frequently in so much pain because she split so often from her body that she didn't realize that's got to be fixed. How much tension she was holding until she began to relax and experience the acutely painful Charlie horse type muscle spasms. After sitting quietly for 8 minutes, she stood up, stretched full body as high as she could. Then she walked out of the cell door because it was time for the afternoon meeting. This was the one time a week she was in contact with the outside world. The AA meeting was attended by most of the inmates because it was an opportunity to get out of your cell and have a coffee and a donut in the middle of the afternoon. It broke up the day and helped put the time in between lunch and dinner. Many who had no interest in quitting alcohol. Some hoped to benefit from the support of the new people who actually had a job to be able to maintain cars. Some cultivated these relationships, expecting them to be useful upon release. These cynical ones would parrot some of the key phrases and nod appropriately and laugh when the others did, go through the motions so they'd appear sincere. If they came across as genuine, many of the visitors from AA would give people the benefit of the doubt. MJ had watched her incarcerated companions con, but you can't con a con, and she knew her way around survival. Some of her companions subscribed to the survival of the fittest idea. In other words, use people before they use you. On the other hand, there were a couple of prisoners who had been sober for years and then started drinking again. Some people in the rooms of AA thought that if you didn't drink but forgot to practice steps, including step 12, then you'd lose your serenity and pick up a drink again because you didn't think you could be any more miserable anyway. There was a slogan on the wall in an AA room one time that read, "You got to give it away to keep it." MJ never forgot this, and the practice of the principles over the years showed her without fail we get back at least threefold what we give. It had become a delicious circle for her. It energized one to give unconditionally to another. The idea she clung to was service is its own reward, but the most people didn't get it when she said this. There are certain concepts that can only fully be appreciated by actually experiencing them. She always shivered with awe when she remembered all the time she got what she needed out of seemingly nowhere. After a few years of this, she began the practice of thanking the universe or powers that be or God or whatever was the big power behind all this for whatever item, circumstance, or achievement she wished to experience. And lo and behold, always it either showed up or presented another even better opportunity for her to experience. Her friends and family had witnessed this time after time. She had a knack for being in the right place at the right time. Every summer, MJ practically tripped over not just one, but whole patches of four-leaf clovers. And she didn't spend hours looking for them. She'd be walking along the sidewalk and then suddenly stop and examine a patch of clovers. 3 times out of 5, she'd pluck at least one from the space of about a square foot. She took her seat and closed her eyes for the opening prayer. The chairwoman passed around the readings and they all took their turns. She asked if there was anyone in the room who was due to receive a token to mark the 3, 6, or 9 month mark without a drink. No one put their hand up, so she continued. She briefly qualified as chair by giving a short synopsis of her experience, strength, and hope, and then she announced, "Now comes the time for the easy part of the meeting for me. This is the speaker's meeting, and Ursula has agreed to share with us today. Ursula, I'll hand the floor over to you." There was a small applause as the gray-haired woman in the back in black slacks and violet sweater stood and turned her front row chair around so that she could see me better if I put this back some. So she could see who she was speaking to. She sat down and said, "Hi, girls. My name is Ursula, and I'm an alcoholic. We're told to break contents our share into 3 phrases: what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I came from an alcoholic family and was drunk the first time when I was 16 years old. I couldn't wait to get more gin into me that day. I finished throwing up in the flush and then headed straight to the kitchen and asked for another drink. How sane is that to seek out more of what made me violently ill? I was willing to suffer the needle to sell my blood for $8 a pint and then go to the bar with the money. I was a 16-year-old girl, very drunk, very fast from losing a pint of blood. Anyone could have used me up, slit my throat, and dumped my body in a shallow grave, and no one would ever know. After all, I was several thousand miles away from home at times where no one knew me. So I survived to meet my first husband and marry him. We had nothing in common really except drinking and sex. He used to sell my body to get money to buy coke with. Thank God I never liked coke. After the fifth hospital admission, the police officer involved in laying the charges told me that if I didn't stay away this time when I called for assistance, the next time he might not be as able or willing to come to my rescue. This time, a gun had been involved. He explained that they placed themselves in danger each time they broke up for fights. Scenes of domestic violence were where a lot of police were killed every year. So, with the help of some very good friends who risked life and limb, I was able to get and stay away from him. His next wife died from a shotgun blast when he was in a jealous fit of rage. I came off the street a couple of years later when a close friend of mine had her throat slit by a bad trick. At my bottom, I found myself addicted to crack. So I dug my sorry ass into a detox and then submitted to a rehab program that lasted 9 months. So that was what it was like, what happened. And then I came to AA meetings and I listened to people who were sober share how they'd done it. I joined a group and began to be responsible for the rotation of duties it takes to have a fully functioning AA group. Someone must show up, unlock, and set up the room, coffee, literature, chairs, or tables. We don't have fairies that do that, you know. Tittering could be heard. Someone must be a liaison between the group and the larger AA as a whole, so there needs to be a group rep who attends service meetings once a month for a time commitment of 2 years. And the group needs a secretary, a treasurer, and some groups have a chairperson, but all monthly group meetings are chaired by the group service reps. The group business meetings are chaired by service reps. These meetings are where the money gets accounted for. The supplies like coffee, cups, sugar, and literature is paid for. Rent checks cut, proportions accordingly to AA and the district to pay for the AA phone. Public service messages, the proportion divided out to World Service Office to keep the websites up and translations of literature up to date, and provides service to anyone anywhere reaching out for the hand of AA's help. The group and its functioning is central to carrying the message as going on a 12-step call is. In case some of you aren't familiar with that term, it's when two sober members go out at the request of someone who is looking to stop drinking to carry the message of recovery. They each share a bit of their story with the hope that their success will show the drunk how they too could recover from this incurable but arrestable disease. I also asked someone who had some time in recovery to be my sponsor. A sponsor is a person who has what you want. In other words, if you have no job and lost your family due to drinking, you would look for someone who found and kept a job, and who had a family. They had a family they worked problems out with. The sponsor I picked had done all of the 12 steps and helped me complete them too. Since I've been around these rooms, I've written my GED, gone back to school, earned a degree. I've had another husband who unfortunately died of cancer last month. I also lost my mother last year to cancer. Despite the ups and downs I've gone through, I continue to practice the steps and participate in some measure of service when I'm able. That's what me being here today is. What a blessing for me to be here and share my story with you. Despite the fact that I'm going back home to an empty house this afternoon, thank God I have the freedom to walk out these doors. Had things gone differently, I could be on the inside of these walls too. It's only by the grace of God I never ended up either committing homicide or being a victim of homicide or committing suicide. Being locked up for grand theft. There was a time I had a kick out of stealing cars for joyriding, knowing glances passed between a couple of the women. Or I could have been locked up in a mental institution with brain damage. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here today. Dana, thank you for asking me to share. It always shows me what I have to be thankful for. The final readings were read and the meeting closed with the Lord's Prayer. The inmates milled around the table with coffee and sweets on it till their creek box was empty. Then most of them gradually drifted back to their cells. Several hangers-on were collected by the guard and penned in their cells until the dinner bell rang in half an hour. MJ never heard someone who shared so clearly about how important the group activities were to maintain recovery. She remembered her first group meetings at Irene's house. There were at least 15 people crammed into that little kitchen. It was there that she felt as though she found a new family. Her family of origins had turned her back on her years ago, and she didn't dream then of the healing she'd have of those bonds in later years. She thanked the members who would come in and put on a meeting and return to her cell as well. Her cellmate had fallen asleep and knocked the artist tools to the floor. The sketchbook lay with its covers bent backwards. MJ bent and retrieved it. She incidentally noticed that there was a drawing of someone who looked very much like her. She paged through the pad, all the pictures for her. Her roommate rolled over onto her back and stretched, opening her eyes and seeing the book in MJ's hand. She jumped up and grabbed Jody. Don't be so fucking nosy. MJ shrugged and went over to her bed and lay down waiting for the next escape from her small cinder block prison. See you tomorrow.